tell me a bit about yourself and your export business.
Well, the first thing you do when you start up a business is do something you know about. I had a 16 year career in exporting in lots of unusual parts of the world. British-made machinery and capital goods, industrial consumables, that kind of thing. And when I wanted to set up my own business, I looked at what wasn't being provided in the marketplace to small companies that wanted to export, because there are quite serious cost barriers. Compliance with the export administration requirements means having someone on board who knows all about it. That means a salary. And you have to do that before you can start exporting, before you can even start quoting abroad, because you have to understand all the cost components that need to go into your quotation or your price list. So it's a catch-22 situation. You can't do the job right unless you've got the skills. You can't get the skills unless you pay a lot of money. So I thought, well, it's not a good idea if you can provide these skills on a per job basis or a 5-minute basis, which is actually how I work for consultancy on small exporters, so they can ask questions and not get a huge bill for it. It's splitting up time into economic units for what the market requires. And you may have a solicitor that charges you by the hour or part thereof. Well, I do 5 minutes or part thereof, which makes it much more accessible to small companies. And a small company in the exporting world is someone who ships less than a couple of hundred times a year. Above that, they should be big enough and making enough money to have their own staff doing it. So I'm looking at the smaller end of the market, and they're the people who don't really know where to go to find out things. And if I don't actually know them, I tell them where they can go and look them up. It's better for them, their souls, to go and look it up than to pay me to do it.
Okay, thanks for that. So why might I want to export?
You have a product and you want more markets for it. You might want to spread the risk. When one market is down, another one can be up. And if you have a good permanent presence in both sides, you can balance it a bit. I hope it's not because the managing director wants to go and play golf in exotic places. That's not a very, very good reason. You'll cut that out, won't you? What you shouldn't be doing is looking for a one-off sale to get rid of a bit of surplus production. There are companies that do that, and it's what they're traders, it's what they make their living from, buying up bankrupt stock and shipping it off somewhere. Unless you really know what you're doing, you shouldn't get mixed up in that. It's complicated, there's a lot of trickery, and it's very easy to lose money. But as a producer of something, you should be looking to develop a market and get a lot of repeat business from it. Repeat business is cheaper to process than the first order, because the learning curve has already diminished considerably by the time you get a few repeats under your belt. And it becomes more automatic, less onerous, and easier.
Okay, so I want to get some additional sales. So where do I start?
You start by seeing where your product can be sold. And there may be technical barriers to exporting to some markets. It may not meet some regulation in the destination market, or it may be very expensive to comply with it. Foodstuffs in particular, even not fresh foods, processed packaged things, usually have to have some form of analysis before they can be sold in most overseas markets. Europe can be different because one regulation covers all, in general, but not necessarily. And labelling is important. You generally have to label in the language of the country of destination. So that may mean designing, printing labels. They may be very expensive to produce. You know, if you're using automatic labelling machinery for, say, something in small bottles or small packets, you've got to have the label stock that goes into the machine, and you may have to buy a lot of it. So you want to make sure you're going to sell all the products to cover the costs and get some of them back, and not have a storeroom full of unused labels. This is most important in consumer markets. In industrial markets, your manuals have to be translated, generally, and any safety plates on the machines have to be in the language of the country of destination, and safety instructions, like don't stick your hand in the blade or something like that. You can't trust people to understand English. You mustn't, it's not responsible. You also have to work out your minimum economical shipping quantities, which is the which has a bearing on the minimum ordering quantity that is economical to produce and ship. Shipping is on a basis of weight and volume, and if you only use a tiny bit of volume, you're going to pay a minimum rate, which may kill the product in the market. So you have to work out a shipping unit that's economic, and it may be different for different markets because shipping costs aren't consistent across the whole world. They're subject to supply and demand. You can get a container from China to UK, for example, for $100, but not the other way around. Although if you get it for $100, you'll be absolutely taken to the cleaners on the importing costs, because they want to make their money somewhere. You need to have a very good idea of what costs are going to be incurred in exporting the product, and they can be an awful lot. In some countries you need a certificate of origin which has to be certified by the embassy of the country concerned, and they charge basically a tax, a percentage of the goods value, and it can be hundreds or thousands of pounds. If you're exporting a small amount and it's only 100 or few, that can still be enough to give you a nasty shock if you weren't expecting it. All these things have to be researched and costed into the cost of producing and selling the product. So you have to do a lot of research before you get near a market and try to get an order from it.
So what is the most common mistake with exporting?
Not understanding the meaning of the terms of delivery and payment. They have a very big effect on your financial health and on the goods getting to the market without being held up in customs somewhere. And they're the single biggest thing that exporters get wrong, I think, because they don't understand them properly. They think they do because it looks like English, but the terms have very specific meanings.
So if I want to start exporting, how long will it take?
Well, if you've got a piece of string, and can you measure it? It depends on the technical complications of the product and the market you're looking for. If you assume that that's all got out of the way as part of the preliminary work, actually taking an order and shipping the goods and getting paid doesn't have to take terribly long. Depends on how far it's going, because you can ship to Ghana in 16 days, plus a week or 10 days for getting the goods through customs the other end, so a month. But it might be twice that to get them to China. And that's called float time. Not just because they're floating, it's because your money's floating.
Okay. So that's important about the money. So how much is it going to actually cost me to export?
There is no fixed amount. I could handle a European shipment for 20 or 30 pounds, but a letter of credit in India, Pakistan, the Middle East can cost hundreds. A letter of credit is a complicated means of providing security of payment, but it brings with it an awful lot of conditions and bits of paper that have to be produced. Quite a lot of them completely pointless, but they're still expensive to produce. So there is no single answer.
So it's obviously difficult to export, but obviously benefits. So how should I go about?
Well, actually, it doesn't have to be particularly difficult. It looks difficult if you don't know anything about it. When you know what you're doing, it may take a little time, but it's not actually terribly difficult.
But
So it's knowledge.
yeah, but a lot of us don't actually have a lot of time. So if we wanted to use an export company, how should we go about choosing a good export company to avoid these types of mistakes?
Well, I don't know very many export companies, actually. This was a very small niche market when I started it, and I don't personally know anyone else who does it, although there must be some. There are quite a lot of people who got made redundant from shipping offices who go home with their typewriter and do this for their previous employer and this kind of thing. There aren't a lot of people doing it to anyone for anyone who turns up. I don't actually work for anyone who turns up. I won't touch anything that looks illegal or explosive. And after a lot of experience in quite a lot of parts of the world, there are some deals that I do just not like the smell of and won't touch them. And I won't do anything to break UK laws. So that lets out quite a lot of the people who come knocking on the door, actually.
Yeah. And what about export forwarders and people like that?
The job of a freight forwarder is to move the goods and make sure that they get shipped. Freight forwarders don't understand about selling things, and the first export document is actually produced long before any goods go anywhere. It can be a price list or a pro forma invoice or an export quotation. To do that, you have to know what you're doing, and you have to know what everything is going to cost and what compliance you've got to go through and what it's going to cost you. Freight forwarders can't do that. It's not their business. Some of them can produce very expensive subsequent documentation. Some comes with the shipping price anyway. But what we're really talking about is part of your marketing. Getting the goods sold. Producing a quotation that someone's going to find easy to understand, gives them all the information they want for importing the goods, because there's a cost to that which the importer has, and make it easy for them to buy from you. Having a scruffy bit of paper with oily thumbprints on it doesn't really give quite the image that you would hope to convey. Smart, clear, prompt, punctual documentation does. It's not something that's sexy or glamorous at all. It's something you should be able to take for granted. But people who don't know what they're doing get out their typewriter or their word processor and produce this terrible rubbish. And anyone trying to read that as a potential importer will probably throw his hands in the air and pray to whoever he prays to.
So, if you are interested in knowing more about exporting or more about starting a business, obviously click on the left of this screen and that will take you through for some more information. If you'd rather email us, here is some of our contact information coming up now. You can obviously visit our site You can talk to us on the phone on this number, email us. Here's the collection of ways of contacting us, which includes a contact form on our website. And we look forward to hearing from you. We love to help new businesses start up. Thank you.